list that we're basically doing it. They have today they have an AI conference in the Expo Center by Lakeside, and I was there for a few moments, and the dean was there also, and he was saying, AI has to be everywhere. You won't. He sounded like me a little bit. You won't be able to get a job if you aren't working with AI. And a lot of jobs will be eliminated that the machine can do better. So we'll set that up. Also, I'm going to try to do Loom. And Loom will do summaries too. And let me just, issues with that. Let me just want everybody to think about it. I record my sessions. And there's important topics that people want to know, like what's due, when's the test, what are the reviews, things that you want to know. Why listen for the entire 90 minutes, let's say, and Sienna, wouldn't it be good? And if I ask you, Sienna, why don't you summarize all the notes? It's a waste of your time, right? Typing and summarizing. Why not let a generative AI program take my voice to text and basically try to see what were the main points. And what I'd like you to do as well is see if, once you're even doing your screencasting, is see if there's any, you can find programs that will summarize it. And there's something called Otter. Let me just share my screen. Let's see here. There's something. See if Sienna and everyone else, see if you can find generative AI programs that summarize recordings. And especially in our case, what? Sienna, Zoom, right? I'll try again if I share my screen, right, that I said before, right? If I go, see, I'm recording, right? Everybody see that it is Sienna, you see yourself in the corner there. It is what? It is delayed somewhat. But even this one on one watching now started streaming 2 minutes ago. This would be nice even here in YouTube, in my YouTube channel. Sienna, wouldn't that be nice to have a summary there already? Also, it'd be nice to have captions also to take from my YouTube. I could put it into other social medias. So see if you can find and research and let us know, everybody in the class, if there are programs. There's one program that I'm familiar with. It's called Otter.ai, that you can be, Otter then becomes another instance in the Zoom meeting that can take notes in the meetings. And Zoom itself, in the enterprise version, it's shut off for us, but it also can take it. So today, this was the, this was going on today. I kind of went in and out of it, but you can see here how big now AI is, What are they talking about? From customer engagement to conversion, AI programmatic advertising. So everybody that's going to be in that's doing marketing, right? It'll be media buying, history will be using AI, building trust through emotional intelligence and branding, AI in action, AI for the next business, remarks from the dean, lunch, it's always good. And then here's transformational power of AI, right? A game changer for AI in the Google Cloud. Google has a cloud. We'll be talking about cloud safeguarding AI, AI in the future of works, AI ethics, because everybody's concerned with data privacy, digital harm, AI startup, and the makings of unicorn factory. So that was today. Okay. So anything I need to address, Sienna? We're all good?
Yep, we're all good. There's no chats.
Okay, there's no chats yet. Okay, so let's go through what is due. So today is September 11th, and you needed to talk about Tech Guide software. We talked about software last time. And then there's the readings you need to do, the adaptive assignment, and the software. And last time we talked about, Luke, was what? We talked about software, and there were two types of software we talked about. What were they? You remember, Luke?
I don't remember what they were.
Okay, you remember, did I ask you, you were here last time, did I ask you to check something on your computer and on your phone? What did I ask you about?
Oh, like the amount of RAM on it.
Well, that was RAM, that was hardware, and what else did I ask last time? You remember, Sienna?
It was finding our actual software.
Operating system,
Yeah.
right? That's what it's called, Luke, right? Operating systems. And what's it? And if I think about it, Dalton, what's an operating system is basically software that when someone, one way to do it is when you buy any type of hardware device, software is already available from the manufacturer. And also people can add additional operating system software. So every computer has an operating system, every phone has an operating system. And basically we have something called IoT. And Emilio, what is IoT? And if we don't know, the whole class, if we don't know what IoT stands for, what do we do in the class, Luke?
We look it up online.
We look it up, right? We got every day, there's going to be another acronym. Every day is going to be, right, that it's going to be hard to pick up, right? And we need to have, everybody needs to have their camera, right? And Antonio, what is IoT? Did you look it up? Everybody needs to do it.
It is Internet of Things.
Internet of Things. So it's Internet of Things. And what the heck does that mean and who cares? So give me an example of Internet of Things. Basically, home automation. Have you heard, Antonio, home automation? That you have a surveillance camera, that you can have a thermostat, you can have lights turning on, automation. Have you heard about that, Antonio?
No, I haven't.
Right. So you can do it. You can do devices that you can have, checking a number of devices. That's basically trying to do what? Connect to the internet and their hardware. So for instance, in thermostat, I can have a thermostat, for instance, a Nest thermostat. And what happens if I'm not in my living quarters? Do I need my and I'm in Miami where it's always hot most of the year, is when I have it cooled. When do I want it to be really comfortably cooled? When I'm in my living quarters or out, not when I go on vacation. Antonio.
What, sorry?
When do I want my you have let's say you're living in an apartment, you want the air conditioning to be on a certain temperature all the time, the same temperature. Sometimes if you go away, let's say you go away for a match, you're not there and you're the only one living there, you don't need it to waste electricity. So basically it's going to sense, for instance, when you're there, when you're not there. It's going to sense, for instance, I like it a certain amount. It can sense that it can be. Now they have a number of Internet of Things. So if I think about it, Sienna, what else is an Internet of Things? They call it like smart devices. They can even have a smart bed, a smart refrigerator, right? All the things, any types of control systems, turning on my lights at a certain time, turning them off, Those are Internet of Things. So if I think about it, JC, do you think Internet of Things has an operating system? What do you think?
I would think so, yes.
Yes, of course. It's a device that has an operating. It may not have the same operating system like your Mac OS, but it has an operating system to be able to connect to the internet, to be able to do the functions, to be able to connect to the CPU, right? All these devices have a CPU, a central processing unit. Some have different chips basically on it. Now, we talked about it before on those operating systems. That was one type of software. And the other operating system is what they call applications software. A lot of times you know it as what? Apps. You download apps all the time, right, JC? It's nothing new, is it? So that's going to be the apps that you're using or the application software, and the operating systems are going to be sometimes different based on it. So who cares what operating system I have? Apps work on certain operating systems. I can have the same app, but there's going to be a version, let's say, for Windows and a version for Mac. There'll be a version for iOS and there'll be a version for Android. So many times you need to know about it. Some are only, for instance, when they're coming out, some will only work, let's say, for iOS. Some will only work for Windows. So that is part of the operating systems. Questions? That clear, Dalton? Yes, no? Okay, so this was on September 11th, then on my Tech Guide software, this is what I needed to do. So let me just make sure if I go to my Wiley Reading and Adaptive, right, and I go to my software and I go to my adaptive assignment, I am what role? In this case, Ethan John, what role am I? Student or instructor?
Instructor.
I'm instructor, so I have a different view than you do. So what does that mean? That it says here that 26 students completed it, 14 have not started it. When was this due? This software, adaptive. Right? So some students are past due, which is not good, right? But then how can I see, do you see a list of all the students, Ethan John? Do you see a list of all the students that have taken this assignment?
I don't see it yet.
Why don't you see it?
Oh, I think you have to click students.
Yeah, I do, right? But do you? So you remember we talked about something that's important here. Let me put it in here. Roles. You see what I'm typing down here? Roles need to know. In information systems, we have roles that you have permissions should be based on the need to know. Do I need to know every student, how they're progressing in the class? Ethan John. I, as a professor, do I need to know that?
No.
Yes or no?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Do you need to know? Is it any of your business? What other students in the class? No, right? Maybe you want to know later on, what was the average of a test, but those are the needs to know. Do you need to know, and basically I can modify students' grades. Should you be able to modify student grades? Of course not, based on the need to know. In our audit area, what role are you taking on then, Ethan John?
TA.
TA. So I'm giving you higher what? Permissions, higher roles, because we're learning on in a different way, the need to know that you're going to be uploading, you're going to be looking. In this case, you want to be able to look at what other students are doing. Because a lot of times we're going to be learning from each other. So different ways. For the quizzes, what you take the quizzes, you'll see your own grades, you won't see others. So it basically, it depends on the need to know. So if I go to students here, notice that it gives me the student name, the time spent, the questions completed, and their grade. So at this point, I can even, what they call, this is a dashboard based on, let me just put this word in that you know what it is. This is called a dashboard. That is a summary for a specific role. You have a different dashboard than I do. I have a dashboard. What do I want to know? I want the class project of everyone here, and it tells me that this is the class in progress. These have completed it. These people have not started it. And this, I can think about it, and it says students 40. It gives me the number of students. I can search for students. And this, in a way, is data, right? And I can think about it is each row in this file is what? Is called a record, and each of these records then is, for instance, we can say then that JC has a record. It says how much time she spent, what are the questions, the current progress, and the grade. So it's like a little grade book, and that is based on what we think about it. These columns that I could put into, you think about these tables, it's like a spreadsheet. And this is where I have data. What do I want to do with data is manage the data and make some conclusions about the data that I can continue in my course. So this is what I have for the software adaptive. And then I opened up that assignment. And then in the what's due section, I know that this is due before class in the tech guide. So everything that I give as an assignment, put this in your notes, it's going to be before class. We start at this point, we start at 3:35. At 3:30, this should be all done. If you haven't finished, I suggest at this point, at least finish it up, that you will have then that adaptive assignments and your quizzes. And in the quizzes we have. The next part, which is due, today is September 11th, on Monday, September 16th, the assignment is what? To do the recording assignments that we talked about, to find a screen recording program that's different from the rest of your group, and do an individual screen recording, and do it with Zoom as well. Use the individual screen recording on top of Zoom, and you can see the differences, and see how does this screen recording differ than the Zoom recording. Does it record to the cloud? So you can think about it. Questions on screen recording. Is called this. Where does it record? Where does it record to? Your computer, the cloud. Is it internet based or computer based? The file type. If I wanted to transfer the file, is it going to be MPG, right? The cost, you want it to be what? We want to have at least a free version. So it may be limited in the free version. If it's at least a free version, what are the limitations? And of course, you want to talk about the ease of use. That's what you're going to be doing in your individual screen recording. In your group recording, you'll also be recording with one screencasting program. I call it screen recording program. On top of Zoom. And in the group, each member will discuss with others the pros and cons of their program. So everybody will understand what each of them do. So we'll be sharing, of course, screens. So you'll be able to say to yourself, hey, I'll use, for instance, Loom sometimes. Sometimes I'll be using QuickTime. Sometimes I'll be using OBS. Luke, any questions in the chat?
No, there's no questions.
Okay, do you have a question?
I do not. I think you
Great.
explained it pretty well.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's where our assignment is. And then additional assignment is for Monday. We're going to move on to talk about data. So data is in chapter 5, data and knowledge management. This is a very important concepts that I want to be able to focus in with you, because guess what? Data is everywhere, and we have to make sense of the data, and more, hopefully we can get what they call machine learning, artificial intelligence to basically help us understand our data to make better decisions. So I need to go to my adaptive assignments to make sure that it's available. So I go to Wiley Adaptive Assignment. I go into chapter 5. You'll see I'll go into managing data in a moment, but let me just make sure that this is available to you. I go to my adaptive assignment. I'm looking at the view I have that looks at editing, and I see already 9 people. We got people here that are ahead. 9 people have already completed it, and 29 have not started. And then I can go to due dates, and already I can see that Duncan and Elena and Benjamin and Sebastian and Shane and Ethan and Nikita have already, and Ryan and Sienna and Antonio and Dylan are ahead. Why is that great? That's great because when I go over this material, they'll have an idea here that can ask intelligent questions. Plus, guess what? When we're taking that data adaptive assignment, we're using Wiley server somewhere. Can Wiley server come down? Yes, it can. We want to make sure that the due date is correct, and the due date says Monday, September 16th. Perfect. You know what perfect is? That's perfect. Okay, so we got that part. We're on our way with this. Let's close this and go back to that adaptive assignment. And then we want to make sure that Wiley Quizzes is available too. So if I go into the quizzes, I know I can cancel this, but if I go into the quizzes, what does it say here? What does it say it's due? The test is due at September 16th. So we know that that's good too. And we can take it twice. We know that allows multiple attempts. It means it allows 2 times, and it can be saved and resumed. So we're good with that. And then I know in my PowerPoints, I know that I will have my data acknowledgement. I want to download my data, my PowerPoint, right? So if I go into my downloads, I should see then if I had my downloads, right? These downloads are what? They're in my secondary storage. And if I click on it, it brings it from my secondary storage into my primary storage. It brings it into my primary storage here. Then I'm going to. Okay. So I have welcome back and I have my information systems. Okay. Questions? So Daniel, we're here. Good to have you back. Anything that you want to let our students go talk about, we want to talk about before we get into data?
I don't think there's anything to add, no. But
And you'll be giving on their first assignment that they did with Zoom, you'll have that graded by when?
yeah.
For them?
So it's almost done. But
But
it'll
you'll have it,
definitely be done before the
Right.
weekend.
yeah, by Monday, you'll have their
It'll be
grade
posted on Monday for sure.
be posted on Monday. Great.
Yeah.
So just so you know that we have Daniel doing your
Oh, there is
what else?
one thing I should probably note when I was
Okay.
grading it.
Okay.
If you copied my instructions word for word, like that's not good. You know, you should try to come up with your own takeaways and pros and cons and everything
Right,
like that.
right. You saw that they thought you were just brilliant, just copy and paste. So it should be your experiences. Okay. So do they have to time to, you've already graded it. Do they have time to change that?
I would happily go back and change those things if some
Okay, so
people who did
everybody
that
hear
would like
that,
to change
that
it.
you'll get points off if you just copied and pasted everything that Daniel put on his. So you want to talk about your experiences, not just even when we use AI, we want to use our own natural intelligence as well. Anything else that they need to know about? Daniel, that you know?
I mean, just like check if your link works, kind of basic stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Put yourself in my shoes as if I'm grading it and make sure everything
Right. But it's,
looks good.
you know what, it's good. What I'd suggest, Daniel, is everybody check their own work.
Mhm.
And then as a courtesy,
Yeah.
everybody in the group check each other's work to make sure that the link, hey, you missed this, and let
Yeah.
them know. And that's the beauty here, is that you can, when we help each other in the group, everybody does their individual work, but it's nice to say, hey, that link didn't work. Or and sometimes what happens is it'll work for me, but externally I can't download it. So that's sometimes internally I can get to a file, but it turns out I may have it on my own computer, but you don't have access to my own computer. So this is a way in which what I suggest you do, just like I said, subscribe to each other's channel, but also check each other's work in terms of just, it doesn't take a long time of saying, hey, I checked and this link, give your fellow colleague a way in which to say, this link isn't working, it's not working for me. Go ahead and they can recheck. So that's a nice way to do it. Okay, Aaron, you have anything to, any words of wisdom for the class? In doing the exercise?
I don't know if they'd be wise. I don't know. I don't really have anything quite yet.
Okay, but we'll look at it. Okay, perfect. All right, so let me share my screen and I'll talk about data. And the idea of data, let's even talk about generically. Let's talk about something that we all are familiar with, the same enterprise. You remember we talked about an enterprise, Sienna? An enterprise, the word enterprise, the same idea as an organization. And Sienna, what is the closest enterprise that we all have in common? That we all belong to?
Sorry, my computer wasn't working.
Okay,
like
what
a
is it? And in an enterprise, let's talk about an enterprise and the data of an enterprise. And my point here is, what is one enterprise that we're all familiar with, that we all belong to? What do you think? Arnav, what
set-
go
like,
ahead.
of my
Sienna. What?
business or like a company can be an enterprise.
Yeah, what enterprise do we know? That we all know?
like computers.
No, but the
Zoom.
enterprise, an organization, what enterprise are we all involved in?
The
We're all
universe.
a part. The university, right? This university, right, is an enterprise. An enterprise is a large organization, right, that has several departments. Does this university have several departments? Yes. Does it have, and in a way you can think about it, does it have several employees? Of course it does, right? Does it have to deal with vendors? Of course. We have basically, and where does it get its revenue? If I think about this, Eduardo, where does the university get its revenue from? Eduardo. Sebastian, where does the university get its revenue from?
From tuition, ticket sales,
Tuition is one. Where else?
ticket sales of events.
Ticket sales of events, right? It gets a lot for TV, from our sports, right? Is a big thing. It has a hospital. The university has a hospital, gets it from patients, right? It has continuing education. So it has a lot of revenue. So you can think about the students in some ways are its customers. They want to think about what? Retaining their data. So let's think about data and how to manage that data. What data does Sebastian, you're on a roll. What data does the university preserve or the university stores? Data about whom?
Their students' data.
Let's start with the student data, right? And then it'll be employee data, and within employee, it'll be faculty data, vendor data. But let's start with students. We've all been a student before. We're either in our past or in our present. We've all been students. So what type of data, Sebastian, do you think the university has to store? Let's start. Let me share my screen. And Sebastian, you'll help me, okay? So we're going to talk about data now. And we're going to be talking about how to manage data. And we're going to talk about, in our example, we're going to talk about student data. So who in the university has your data, Sebastian?
My professors.
Okay, so one is the professor. So it's not even one professor, right? It's several professors, but so it's professors. Who else has your data? Anything about you?
My academic advisor.
Okay, your advisor. Who else? Not it?
The financial aid office has my data.
Financial aid. Who else? That's it? You live on campus?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have a car?
Yeah.
So what kind of data, does the university have any data about your car?
Yeah, parking.
Parking.
Permit.
Okay, if you lived on campus, it would be housing, right?
Yeah.
Who else? Basically, if you would be, if it would be the wellness center. Could be what else? Basically, if I'm gonna, what school are you in?
I'm in the business school.
Okay, so the business school, what department are you in?
I'm a finance and accounting student.
You're in two departments, right?
Yeah.
So it's finance department, accounting department, Sebastian. That's just the beginning, right? And so we can think about a number of these, and then we can think about, did you apply to this university?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Admissions? And if you graduate from this university, they have development. They're going to try to get you and your parents to give more money, like you didn't give enough. Right? All of these departments have just your data, but every data, and just the present students. Just what year are you, Sebastian?
I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore. So basically they had your data in the freshman and the software, right? And then who takes care of, basically, if you want to send your transcript? The registrar? You got an idea that just in that, think about it. All those different departments have your data. And where are you living now, in general?
I live home,
Home where?
Pinecrest.
Pinecrest. And let's say you have an address then, right? So
Yeah.
what kind of demographic data, let's go into this in student data, what kind of demographic, I'm going to use this, demographic data would they have on you? It would be, in this case, we could think about it as what we call fields or attributes. And that would be what? For instance, it'd be last name, right? First name, what else? It'd be, do you have a social security
Yeah.
number? You have a social security number? Do you have a C number? The university, right? And then you have, let's say you have address, right? And then you have a phone. And then you're going to have like the GPA, right? And a number of places here. It could be your major. And then in this case, you have two majors, right? And then it could be majors. You could have your GPA, right? We could also have your tuition, but even just in this case, let's say, Sebastian, you want to move. You want to move out of your house of your parents. Did you ever think about that, Sebastian, in the future?
Yeah, in the future, yeah.
Yeah, in the future. Let's say you moved. Who has this information here? It could be the professors, it could be the advisor, it could be financial aid, it could be parking, it could be housing, it could be wellness center, it could be the business school, finance, accounting, admissions, development, and registrar. That's just the beginning, right? And then it could be like health center. You ever been to the health center?
No, I have not.
Okay, but it could be the health center. And what happens is Sebastian moves out and he says, you know what, I want to live maybe in Brickell. Seems like it's better, more fun than living in Pinecrest. So he moves to Brickell, and what happens? Sebastian, what happens with this address?
It's invalid. It doesn't pertain to me anymore.
Right, but basically they have to change it. Who in the, where does it have to be changed in the university?
Well,
At the student center, from the advisor, from financial aid, from parking, from housing, wellness, business school. You got the idea? So many different places your address has to be changed. Do you even know who is even storing, where your address is changed? No. Do you want to know? No. So this is called, when they call it, these are just basically, when we think about, these are just files. You with me? You're doing a great job, Sebastian. So these are going to be all files. And what the problem is, when I have these files and I make changes to that address, what's the problem with that?
You have to update it so the files stay valid.
Somebody has to update it. I'm not going to update it, right?
Yeah.
You maybe have told the university, but who do you have to tell, right? You have to tell 30 different departments. And what happens when they change it? It could be what? Is it going to be redundant, that data?
Yes.
It's going to be redundant. So that data is going to be redundant. Is it going to be possibly error prone? Because what? Somebody has to make sure if it said 1150, they could have said 1105. They could have inverted that, right? So somebody has to check on the accuracy of that. So it's going to be redundant. It's going to be able to then take extra space. So we need something more efficient. The way that we do it more efficiently is what we call a data management system. And that means my data that's common is stored in one place. So your demographics is stored in a data place. So when you have to update, when you move from Pinecrest to Brickell, how many times will it need to be updated theoretically? Sebastian.
You mean like how many times I have to manage, or like
The system, if your address is stored in just one location and everyone can then access it, how many times does it need to be stored?
once after you change it?
Once, right? So it makes it more efficient, right? So basically, when we think about it, that when we think about this chapter, why I call it so important of this data and data management system, why I think this is so important for us is the idea that we're going to manage that data in a consistent part. So what is important, and you're bringing that up, Sebastian, is there are challenges in managing data. And they can be addressed using what we call data governance. So Julian, what do you think data governance is?
I'm not sure,
But what
I'm-
can you do?
can you hear me? I'm
I can
Googling
hear you
it.
perfectly, Julian. What do you think you need to do then?
I looked it up on Google and
Great. And what did you read when you looked it up?
it's
what
a
did
set
it
of
say?
policies, processes, and tools that help organizations manage their data assets.
Right. So now we got to make that into meaningful words. What you did is you did a great job, Julian, in that you found it out. And now we're going to say, number one, what does that mean? And number two, who cares? Right? So it's basically, we're saying the university now can gather all this data just on students, right? And you're a student, right? So you can realize it. And what do they have to do? They have to have some kind of policies of what data they're going to collect, right? They have to have a policy of when Sebastian's moving from Pinecrest to Brickell, that somebody has to be in charge of that, right? I can't say, well, somebody did it. Who did it? I don't know. It's like your group, right? Somebody was supposed to upload that assignment. Well, I don't know who was supposed to upload. I expected somebody to do it. You have to have some kind of governance to say, hey, you're going to be in charge of uploading. You're going to be in charge of editing. You're going to be in charge of the student data, such and such. So it's policies. Also, there's a policy of what? Do you think in this case, Julian, the university could get your credit card information? Is there ways in which possibly that could happen, right? When people pay
So-
anything by credit card, do you think it's going
Yeah.
to be important for them to keep it secure?
Yes.
Yeah, so it has to follow certain guidelines to make it secure. It has to find out, for instance, Julian, that there's one address in Pinecrest for Sebastian and one address in Brickell. What is valid? And it may be that he wants to have always the Pinecrest there because he wants maybe his parents, he said they're not going to move as often as maybe Sebastian is. So they may say, hey, we have the student's address and maybe also the parent's address, or address 1, address 2. So that's what data governance is. And any organization, do you see that, Julian? Any organization, it's just like has to basically control what we have. So if you think about it, Sebastian, its control is part of accounting, right? When you think about accounting, right, people have to make sure that I have the right set of books. Somebody has to be in charge, basically, and thinking, in even auditing, what are the rules and regulations. An organization also has to have policies of what data is going to be, and it has to be policy of what they're going to share. Do you think in this case you want the university to share all your data? No. What about your let's say your health data? In this case, Dalton, do you want the university to share all your health data with everyone, that it can be on a website and everybody can see all your health information? Dalton. What do you think, Sebastian?
In terms of who can see my data?
Yeah, of your health. Do you think there should be certain people that sees your health information and others that don't?
I mean, yeah, depending on what person.
Yeah, I mean, you give the permission. There's something called Privacy Act for what they call HIPAA that says certain data can't be shared, right? It's like in a way that you can have it. So these are the ways that we're going to be talking about. We'll be talking about big data and basically ways in which to implement, ways in which to house data. And that we'll talk about the characteristics of big data, basically how to implement and maintain data warehouses. And it's basically, what's a warehouse? A warehouse can be, if I think about it, Connor, you know what a warehouse is? A warehouse can keep equipment, right? You know, I'll put some things in the warehouse. But what do you think a data warehouse is? Is a place, and it doesn't have to be a place, and it's basically hard drives or something that we're going to set up where we're going to maintain data that we can make decisions upon. And we'll talk about the idea of there's benefits and challenges of implementing data and understanding how to make queries or how to interrogate the data to make decisions. And how does AI fit into this is AI is going to help in not only storing my data, but retrieving my data and making decisions about my data. So for instance, Connor, are you there? You hear me?
Yeah.
Good. So have you ever shopped at Amazon, Connor?
Yeah.
And did they ever give you recommendations? Like if you bought this or any other types of thing, if you bought this, you may like this, or all the social media, a lot of times have done it. What are they doing? They're using artificial intelligence based on your data. Who is the most similar to you to make recommendations and forecasting? All of this is done if they're going to even send you ads, right, to your feed. A lot of times they're going to be sending you different ads to your feed than my feed. You have different interests than I do, right? And what they're hoping is that they know everything about all these advertisers. You'll see, Connor, basically know your likes and dislikes may be better than we both know each other's likes, right? because they basically can tell our age, they can tell what we bought, they can tell what our likes, what kind of music we like, all of these kinds of things, where I like to be entertained, what foods I like. This is all done with artificial intelligence, but it's done based on data. So in order to get those data, managing that data has to be important for ourselves, but also for any organization, and then using it for AI. And we talk about that database approach is basically pooling together that data that I reduce the redundancy. And let me just see what else is important here. So we talk about what's the problem is, which data do I want to collect? Which data do I want to delete? Which data do I want to keep? And how accurate is the data? And that area here in data governance is, what are the policies? Just like we were talking about before, is what are the policies and what are the rules to manage my data? And who is going to be responsible in the organization to be like what they call the owner of the data, to make sure that it's updated, to make sure even what type of data gets into my database. It may be that there's an area where somebody's coming to me and say, you know what, Dr. Rush, we want to give a scholarship to a female student that's majoring in finance and marketing, who's also on a sports team. The problem is I don't know who's on a sports team. I don't know everybody's majors. And so basically you want to be able to say, hey, I wish they would have been collecting some of this data to make it easy for me to find. So there's difficulties in managing data. What are the difficulties? Basically, I get a lot of data. Think about the stock market, right? It increases exponentially all the time. It's scattered the data across all the organizations, and I don't even know where it's stored. It can be multiple sources of that data, and they could be different data sources. Data rot means that it's old data and it's irrelevant. Data degradation can also mean that it's not good data anymore. Then we have to think about, we got to secure my data. What is everybody worried about? Is I'm going to be hacked. They're going to take my credit card. They're going to take and sell my health information. My data has to be secure. It has to be something that I can trust. And sometimes it's by government regulation. For instance, for universities, there's certain regulations that they have to follow in order to, when they're storing their data. Healthcare organizations have certain responsibilities. Banks have certain responsibilities. So you can think about the difficulties in basically from those data governance, where when we talk about master data, that's talking about the different fields or the different descriptions. So I want to have first name, last name of students. I want to have their C number. I want to have their addresses. That's my master data that can be across the organization. And the database approach is what we consider to be a way in which my data is broken down. And my data hierarchy can be broken down. Think about it as almost a spreadsheet, like a table. Everybody knows what a spreadsheet looks like, right? What does a spreadsheet have? It has rows and columns. The rows are called records, and the columns are called fields. So if I had a student database, I could have each row is my students, and the columns could be last name, first name, test 1, test 2, just like I had even when I looked at the file for who completed a certain assignment. So if I look here, a database management system, the registrar, you remember how we talked about the registrar, has data. The accounting department has certain data, and the athletic department has certain data. And this is all put into what they call a database management system that can be shared, and some things cannot be redundant. So what's important here is you need to know this data hierarchy for the test. Did you hear that, Shane? Basically, you can think about it is the data hierarchy. This goes from the lowest to the largest. A bit is basically just what the computer understands, and that's a 0 or 1. A byte is a character. A field, you remember what I told you, is like an attribute or column. So last name, first name, and the data file is like my sheet. And the database is a number of tables grouped together that are related. So this is a hierarchy of data for a computer file that I have a file, I have the university database, and I have a file, I have a record, I have fields, I have bytes, and I have bits. But what you see are usually the human doesn't see these bits and bytes, but rather they see the file, the record, and the fields. That's what they see. And what's in terms that what we need to know here in a database management system, what's important is this, a primary key. And a primary key is a field in a database that's unique to each record. So if I state a primary key is unique for the table. So if I have all my students in my grade book, that's a grade book table. And I have my first name, last name, test 1, test 2, all your grades, like you go look at your grade book. What makes up a primary key is that there's going to be one field that's going to be unique to each person. Each person is going to have a unique number, a unique way to find you. Now, last name, first name isn't usually a primary key because they can be multiple people with the same name. What would be something, in this case, Sebastian, that I could add to my grade book that would make each person unique? What field should I add? Based on the university, what do they give you any type of way to distinguish you versus anyone else? Because
Yeah,
I'm
there's
sure
the C number.
the C number. So if I ask you on the test, Sebastian, what would be a primary key to find Sebastian Hernandez in my class? There could be another Sebastian Hernandez, right? Especially Hernandez that in Miami is pretty, it's not unique. And I bet you I could find another Sebastian, right? So that primary key, if I were asking you, that would be the C number. And what we'll be talking about after we do this part is we'll talk about big data and how we can forecast big data. And what will be good, Sebastian, then is to get examples of big data, of tons and tons of data that we can get easily. And what we'll do is we'll maybe download some equities, some from the stock market. Do we get a lot of data there? And what can we do is we can forecast in the future what, for instance, the stock price can be. And you'll see that later on they have something called quant traders using different modeling and now using AI to forecast what will be in the future. And we'll use it as an example to bring alive this readings. Because guess what, Julian? Just reading it is boring. You agree? Just reading it, it's amorphous. I don't get a feel for it. Nobody's going to ask you, let me hire Julian because he knows the definition of DBMS, database management systems. They could care less. They say, go Google it, right? Just like Google data governance. But what they would do, can he work with AI and other modeling to even follow the models, follow the machine learning to see, are they doing it correctly? And working together in it. That's what we'll be doing. And that's what I think is fun and enjoyable and also useful for everybody. And guess what? Arnav will have issues, right? But we'll be able to do what? Document our issues. That's why we're spending the first weeks. And when anybody says it didn't work, guess what, Sebastian? That is not acceptable in the class, right? What is this is where it didn't work. Now, in what we were being able to do before is say, hey, now we can pass it on to someone else to see what is the issue. Or, Sebastian, you've got it to work. Now you can share that with someone else. I figured out the problem. And we share with the group. It ends up being what, Antonio? That it becomes then a team effort. Nobody's going to be doing anything by themselves per se. You want to reach out not only to this group, but maybe to the world, right? That's the beauty. Let me find the best person in the world that can help me with this. Right? So that's the key here. And how do you do that? It's first we got to document. We even got to figure out what is our problem, and then we can document. Okay, so thank you very much. Anything else in the chat I need to look at? Luke and Jay and
there's
Sienna?
nothing in the chat. No.
Nothing in the chat. So did you understand? So let's review. So basically we're thinking about data. It has to be, how do we manage the data? There has to be some rules to our data. And then once we get these rules and we put them into the systems, is we got to be able to say, okay, now I know what the data is. Now just having data is I first have to make sure that it's accurate. And after it's accurate, then I have to make some conclusions about it. I got to get some knowledge about it. Just to have the data, it's pretty easy now. Everybody's inundated with the data. It's how I can do it. And then you can see it's also a problem that they know. The internet knows a lot more about us. And what are they doing? They're all the time collecting your footprint. You're on, you go, you have internet on, they're following you. I don't care how many privacies and all that you turn off. The world knows so much about us. Whether I want to or not, that's the case. So, and that's why we can do it. And there's issues with it. Anything else? So everybody knows what we need to do. Let's finish up the assignments. And then after we do those assignments, then we can go to other assignments, playing around with what we call algorithmic trading, spending time to figure out where are we going to how are systems, machine learning, how is the machine going to learn to find patterns in all this data? Okay? What else? I'm going to share my screen and I need to do what? Take attendance. If you have any issues, stay with me, right? Let's see what we got here. I need to, this is HI, I have to go to attendance. I have to check in, start check-in. Once we get check-in, 12:02, stay with me if you have questions. Otherwise, have a good week, meet with your groups, make sure that everything is correct. And Daniel said just copy and paste is not enough. We want to use our natural intelligence besides machine intelligence, right? So stay with me if you have questions. And thank you again,
Goodbye.
Luke and Sienna, for doing it. And Sebastian, thanks for being picked on today. You did a good job. Jake, what's up?
I'm
got
still
it?
trying to log in. Yeah. 'Cause my
It's
Blackboard.
12:02.
Yeah. All right.
So you got a hold of everything now? You know how the class is running?
Yeah. It's it took a little, but I know how it works, and I actually really
Right.
like it. How
Okay, so but
how
you gotta
simple
be,
it
you
is.
gotta be on up on it, you know, it's some classes you can, just wait to the test and you can slack. This one you can't.
Yeah, but I really enjoy it. How it's like
Okay,
collaborative.
okay, good.
Yeah. So
Okay, I just want to make sure that this is a good match, you know what I
it
mean?
is, and I'm gonna commit myself.
Yeah, and you be the leader in your group. You take over and make sure that when people are uploading, right, you get the group going together and you check one another. You make it as a data governance, basically the policies is we check each other's work, right? Make sure the links
Yep.
work, make sure that they do a good job, that people don't, because it's going to reflect on you too,
Yep.
and then you can practice being a leader in the group.
Yep.
Okay?
All right. Thank
Got
you
it?
so much,
You're
Dr. Rush.
welcome.
Yep.
Ciao,
Of
ciao.
course. Ciao.
Ciao. Stop sharing. Did we turn everything off?
I turned off recording, but not YouTube.
Okay, let's turn off.